Good evening. Welcome to this session of Prophecy for the Last Hour, preparing for a paradigm shift. So I have a whole evening's worth of information I want to impart again, and I was just thinking, do I have a title? I don't think I have a title yet. I'm still kind of mulling over a lot of this research and information so far. So you're going to have to go with me, if you want, as I work through the information I have. I was studying today about the promises that were made to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, who are the fathers. They are our fathers of the faith. I am in a long discussion with my husband. One of the blessings in my life is that I am married to a deeply spiritual man who loves the scriptures just as much as I do. And, you know, as iron sharpens iron, we do test each other in a good way with our knowledge and understanding, all with the idea of really trying to get to the bottom of this. There is so much. It is an unfathomable spring, you know, fountains of living water. It's just past finding out. And to me, it is the most exciting journey anyone could ever be on. So I guess today I said, I am like all in. I am never going back. This is so exciting to study the scriptures deeply and to get the treasures out of, you know, because they really have sort of been buried under this ground, and to get them out, to kind of polish them up, dust them off, and put them out for the world to see. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do. So I want to take you on my journey today, which was kind of interesting because it started out with this big discussion I had about the Jubilees. Many people, and my husband especially, is unpacking this. This is a very critical understanding to help us to put together all the information we need for these last days. And I believe with all my heart, as Jesus said, you know, Father, he prayed that we would be one, even as he and the Father are one. And I believe that's a prophetic prayer of Jesus, is that absolutely is going to come to pass and be answered. And I really one day worked at the word one is this word. There's 3 different words you can use for the word one. But this one is a word like telios. And it really means, it's like you're going to a point. Like a vector. Like you have a target. That you're going to get there. That's your target. That one point there is where you're going. And we are all coming into this place. If we stick with the Lord and we stick in right relationship with each other, I really believe we will come into all understanding. And we will have one faith, one understanding, with one baptism, you know, this thing that we're in, which is the kingdom of God. All that being said. Anyways, I was working, someone who made a comment on my YouTube directed me to this book. It's called America in the Bible by Stephen Grant, and who has written a lot about some of the similar things that I have in a series of the YouTube about American prophecy and about the tribes of Israel and, you know, where they went in the world. And his research and mine were very much on the same page, and it's really exciting to see someone else, a fellow journeyer on this. But one of the things that really struck me today when I was reading this, this is the thing with the Jubilee, when you see this whole thing, the 6,000 years, including the 7th year, kind of all laid out in a linear way, and how God has been working salvation through the nations in this march through history. And there's always been these great epochal, I don't even know moments in time, like at the commissioning of Jesus' ministry, when he started his ministry, or the birth of the Messiah, or in Abraham and on Mount Sinai when they received the law, really important things. That the prophecies play out over thousands of years. Most people look at the end times, and I've been guilty of this. You know, you want to see the whole thing in this like 7-year, you know, all condensed and happening in 7 years or in 3 years or in a generation. And it's really not like that. This thing has taken thousands of years, these prophecies, to play out. There's 1,700 years, I believe, of a prophecy of Moses to where Joel was seeing it come to pass. We have to understand, you know, God is not slow, as he says, as we consider slowness. He's just working out a master plan in his time and in his way. But this was just a kind of a crazy journey I had today. So I was looking up this verse, Genesis 49, which is a chapter in the Bible where Jacob, the patriarch, is putting the birthright covenantal blessings upon his sons. And it's a very pivotal, prophetic little segment because it's just packed. It is absolutely loaded, which now, look in hindsight, of thousands of years of history that has actually happened and played out to the T as the Holy Spirit directed Jacob to say. But so it is through thousands of years. But the thing is, this in verse 22, it starts talking about with Joseph. It picks up how Joseph ended up with the major part of the birthright. And I have a whole YouTube on this, the Bekara and the Barakah, and he ended up with one of them of the blessing, okay? And actually it wasn't even him, it was Jacob went right through him to his two sons, to Ephraim and Manasseh. Actually the whole thing ended up on the head of Ephraim. So, but the one thing that when you really look at these promises that God made to Abraham, that he said he would make him a father of a great nation and many nations. It was very clear that a plurality of nations would come from him. His seed would produce a plurality of nations, and great kings would come out of his seed. But this word, and the reason I'm so into this, because people, and I wish I could excite the younger generation, they are going to get with the program, I'm convinced, because God will not leave a whole generation behind or unsaved, basically, in this late hour. But that there is so much. The Bible is the greatest. The science in the Bible, the history in the Bible, the prophecy in the Bible, the literature, the humor, whatever you look at, it's all there. And it's so, if you would just study a little deeper, if people would just, get out of the world and get into the Word. And I have to say, it disappoints me tremendously that the people who do teach now, to a large extent, and make buku bucks off the gospel people, which, just let me tell you right now, that's wrong. And it's all over the early Testament. You are not to make money. You can make a living wage, but you cannot make money, buku bucks, off of the gospel. That is called selling the anointing, which has always sort of been a problem and is a real problem in American Christianity today, in the West especially. And that's why we have sold her, and that's why we're so blind. These teachers, I go, clueless. But they're making buku bucks because they got nice little phrases, and they can tickle the ears of a people that are absolutely clueless. It's crazy. Wasn't going to go on a rant. Anyways, when you look at these promises that were made, what really struck out to me, and when I started to work this word, and this is what I tell people they have to do, and you have to look up every single word. Well, you don't have to. This is what I've learned to do. Not every single word, but the key words, especially in all these verses, because the translations are totally out of oil. They're just, and I'll give you a perfect example. But the thing that we have to understand, because one of the things when you go online to study this whole, what's called the two houses of Israel, or it's got a couple other names, but there's a real racist, some people who I do not believe are of my Father Yahweh. They are, best case, they could be plants, who knows? Satan has his boots on the ground, trying to always muddy the waters. But from the get-go, from the absolute beginning with Abraham, it is very clear, going all the way down in the story, we find to Joseph's coat of many colors, that God has always been calling out and working with a blended peoples. So this idea that, because I even get comments on my, look, it's, they put race into this thing. You are not even in God's doorway when you have that kind of understanding. God does not look on the outward man. There are reasons for the genetics that play out like that. But the heart, what's really going on inside of man, what's really made the different, it's a whole different understanding. But it has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with genetics and blended genetics, because genetics is a huge battleground field today of understanding and proving this thing, and both sides have their well, I don't know what to call it, but and this is what bothers me about the Christians. They are not steeped enough, at least the Jews are, because they really are into ancestry. They really kind of have a little bit of a heads up on understanding why it is so important and why it has always been important to document movements, like troop movements, you could say in one way of saying it, or movements of your people groups on the planet and where they went, how they mingled, what happened. So the Jews do have a fairly decent record of this. Now, Abraham, let's just look at this thing, because this is so important to understand that from the get-go, God called out a multi-genetic multitude. And I don't think we really understand this, that even in the 12 tribes, when they were put together, you have from Abraham and Sarah, where you had Isaac. Sarah was the daughter, and I believe this is accurate, if you really study the gene, of one of Abraham's brothers. They were this group started out pretty close-knit. They were pretty clanal in there, where they picked their mates and everything. And it goes the same thing to Isaac, who married Rebekah, these are Laban's sons. This was a brother. These people, this is all a pretty large clan, extended family group of people, of genetics, okay? That much. And into Jacob, who Jacob picked the wife, he ended up with 4, but his favorite, so to speak, was Rachel, who was also from this pool, okay? So you have Isaac, you have Jacob, you have Rachel, you have Sarah, you have Abraham, and you have, who was the other one in this? Isaac, are kind of all from this pool, okay? But Abraham had other progeny that's not in this 12-tribe record. Jacob, I hope I said Abraham did, okay? Isaac did. He had Ishmael, and he had, Abraham had Isaac and Ishmael, and he had another wife and other children. Then you have Isaac, who had, by Rebekah, had Jacob and had Esau. Now, there's a very important principle. Genetics are not the same thing as a birthright or a covenantal blessing. I hope, and there's only people who are going to follow what I'm saying who've really been kind of studying this thing. So if I've lost you already, I'm really sorry. You should listen to the YouTube. You should start to study this out. You should get educated and intelligent to enter the discussion, because this is going to be hugely important, this understanding as this concept of the mark of the beast, which most people don't really even begin to get on the radar because we've lost so much. But be that as it may, but when you get to Jacob and his 4 wives, he had 2 wives, Bilhah and Zilpah, who were handmaidens of Leah and Rachel, who were the daughters of Laban, and nobody, God has hidden it, who their genetics were. Where these handmaidens came from, I mean, there is some midrash, there's some different people say different things, and a lot of, even to be a handmaiden, which is a servant, which mostly in that culture means you didn't even come from that genetic pool. They usually made servants of another group of another people group. Okay, so there you have a whole, and these 2 ladies fathered 4 of the tribes. Okay, and then you get to Joseph. You understand, Joseph had an Egyptian wife, and one of the things I read today, just a little interesting tidbit. This is what Josephus says. I mean, it's just a great story. I mean, if you like literature anyways, you can't write better stories than these. Joseph's wife, Ashnaroth, was Potiphar's daughter. Potiphar was the one, who took him in, and then it was his wife that was constantly chasing him. I mean, here's in this household, he's probably got a crush on the daughter. and here he's got the wife of Potiphar's wife after him. It's just a really crazy story. It's kind of funny. But that's who Josephus says Asenath was. And anyway, she's pure-blooded Egyptian. 100% pure-blooded Egyptian. She happens to be the mother, which means she's got half of the DNA going into these kids of Ephraim and Manasseh. So by the time you get these 12 tribes coming out of Egypt at this time, they are a 100% blended group of people. So I'm just tired of, if people don't get this understanding, all right, that God is calling them, and it's so much deeper than this, how God, because the heart of man, Jesus said, he knows what's in the heart of man, okay, which is what's kind of a coded reference to our DNA, which is our code, which includes everything that everybody of our family tree going all the way back, okay? So, but the point is that when you get up to heaven, and what it says in Revelation, there's every tribe and nation and tongue represented there. He's not kidding. There always was and there always will be. So don't make my Yahweh Father out to be a racist, okay? Because you're just flat out wrong. And I just have to say that because I'm just really, people, we need to get ourselves educated on what the real issue is. Oh my gosh. And I have to say that so then you have, okay, so this is really important because the storyline we're picking up is the promises, the prophetic utterances of birthright blessing, a prophetic, how to say this, how God was going to work his salvation through the nations, through Joseph, which ended up to be, this is the people group that have become the sands of the sea and the stars of the sky that is inhabiting the whole earth today, that has Yah's seed, or is otherwise known as Abraham's seed in them, okay? It's done, okay? It's done. The Jews, on the other hand, the house of Judah, another whole group of people who have a whole different genetic base to them, which is really kind of interesting, even though we're all mix and mingle. People don't get bogged down. And they have retained a more, especially with the Kohanim gene, because the house of Judah is the Jews today over there in Israel. It's our brothers of the house of Judah, the Levites by genetic, and a lot of tribes that have attached themselves to them. But because they had to keep a pure bloodline, because of having the scepter promise, a pure bloodline in which the Messiah could come through, it's a whole different animal. You cannot compare these two groups of people, the Ephraimites in the world and the house of Judah. But God has done an amazing thing, and he is about, the reason this is important, because this is the card, in my opinion, and people that are beginning to see this is the blowback card. Let me tell you what Satan, I keep saying, is going to make a move very soon. That's why we call it a paradigm shift. What people are saying, the prophecies, the understandings, the dreams, the visions, the word, whatever people are getting, if you're not listening, I'm sorry, but soon and very soon, our enemy is going to rise up and he's going to make his move, okay? Fine. Let him. He loses anyways. But the point is, God has a blowback move, okay? And this is what we need to ferret out of the word. And I'm tired of people calling America Babylon because it's another clueless understanding. And America has plenty of Babylon in her, but she is not geographically or prophetically or pictorially, she is not the whore that sits on Seven Mount, okay? That is reserved for a whole nother, okay? So if you're watching this, this corrects me, this Left Behind movie, this is what I mean. So many Christians, and I've seen getting their theology from the Left Behind books and now from the Nicolas Cage movie, which is so, oh my gosh, people. It truly is the blind leading the blind. Anyways, because the Jews are less than 1% of the world's total population. Now, either God be true or every man a liar. Or God be a liar and everybody out there with their truth be true. It can't be both ways. So he says that he was going to make the progeny of Abraham is so huge in the earth that they were going to be like the sands of the sea and the stars of the sky, which is another, you just can't count them. They're and I think billions and billions and billions of people on the planet from this Haleo group is a pretty good fulfillment of that. Okay, now why is this important to the whole storyline? Okay, let's go. I'm so sorry. I had to just say that. This is what is so funny about Bible research, because I've learned you have to do your homework. You have to be Berean. You have to. And most of the teachers and the prophets, they're not at all Berean. I'm floored, and I'm just a little girl. I mean, so I look at and I just have an internet, and I can just do, but what I have is faith. I have the mind of Christ. That's what my Bible says to me. Little misbeliever, that I have the mind of Christ, and that through the Holy Spirit, I can understand all truth. Now that's what it says, and I believe it. And I love Yahweh, and I do everything I can to obey keep his commandments. So I don't have a lot of, I don't spend a lot of time at night getting all worried about certain things. But anyways, I started to work this verse. This is really funny. Joseph, let me see, Genesis 49, verse 22, where we're starting out with Joseph. And it says here that Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. Now that's very pictorial, and I'm like, okay, it's very pretty, but what the heck does it mean? This is why I always say, what are you trying to say here? So I started to look it up. Now let me tell you something. I don't know, okay, I don't know what translation this is. I will read that same verse to you and I believe I have an NIV here, that Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. That's pretty close. Okay. Well, let's just start here. The word bough, do you know what word that is? This is a word that is translated 2,369 times. Not bow. You know what it's translated? It's son. It is the word Ben. You ever heard that? Did you watch Judah Ben Berean, Ben-Hur? Ben is the word for son, okay? And a lot of times in Jewish names they will have, like the son of, gosh, I should have had some of these lined up to tell you, but Ben is a word, it means son. It's translated 2,369 son. Where they got bow, I have no idea. It is translated bough, B-O-U-G-H, twice. Now you're going to tell me from 2 times to something that is 2,369 times? How am I going to get the understanding that Joseph is being told he is a fruitful son? Okay, the word is son. And then the word fruitful, that this word fruitful, meaning it is the word to be fruitful, which is to bear, to increase, to cause to grow, which is always used in the fruit of the womb for your son, for your progeny to increase. Okay, now I just have to say in the defense, and I think the King James is the worst one on this one, it's very pictorial, and to a certain extent, see, I don't know who's trying to hide the truth here. Part of it is because I will tell you right now, all the truth is encrypted, and this is a sort of an understanding that I will, because this is the wheat and the tares. It says in another text that another vine was planted outside of the Father's will. So this idea, when you get into the agricultural parabolic language that is always used in the Bible, there is agricultural parabolic language that uses the concept of the vine. No doubt about it. But in here, it is a really bad translation. It is always means, and it's translated children 111 times. Now, if you don't bring forth its very first usage, and this is just Bible basics. You look at the word, you look the word up in your Strongs, and it's coded with my New American Standard. It is not even translated this way in the New American Standard. Its first usage is in Genesis 3:16, and this is really interesting. Its first usage is "You shall bring forth children." This is where the Father is talking to Eve after the whole thing's gone down, and he's just telling them what's going to happen, how it's going to go, and he says that you shall bring forth, you will have pain in childbirth when you bring forth children, when you conceive. Okay, so so we know we're talking about children. And in the second usage, right after that, in Genesis 4, we know it's talking about son and children. It's where Cain names his first son Enoch, and he names a city after his son Ben, It was Enoch. So it's a son. Okay, so I have no idea why they translated it this way. Okay, even a fruit, and then they double it up because it's a fruitful bough, and then they say it again, which is a state. He's a fruitful bough by a well. Now let's go to this word well. Oh, I got another one for you. I have to tell you this really quick because you look at them all in the New Living translation, and I have no idea. I'm asking you scholars, what? Joseph, this is how it's translated in the New Living. Joseph is the foal of a wild donkey. Let me tell you what, the foal of a wild donkey at its spring. Okay, now I gotta tell you something. That is so, I looked everywhere. There is nowhere you're ever even gonna, it is translated a couple times. This word ben, we're talking about the word ben, which means son, is translated a couple times as bull, 2 times. I mean, all right, I'll go 2 times. Bulls, plural, 5 times. Calf or calves, 2 times. And 1 time, a young goat. Nothing about donkeys. Donkeys are not even the same kind of animals as these. At least bulls and calves, and these are in the same kind of family groups. Cattle. But this, so I mean, you have to look at these translations. Who's trying to lead us astray? I ask the question, what's going on here? There is something, if you don't, well, that's another whole rabbit trail. Now, the Dewey-Rames Bible, just to tell you, out of about 21 translations, was the only one that translated it as Joseph is a growing son. Now, let's go on in this thing. So what we have is saying Joseph is then I finally went into the, I thought, well, let's just check with the Septuagint, what the Old Testament because it's an Old Testament verse. Let's just see what they say. And that'll be interesting. I'll give you that in a second. But let's go on. This word fountain, which is fountain in this verse, and it's also translated spring, and it's also translated well. Now, this is really going to floor you. You want to know what that word is? Nothing, 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 nothing. Did I say that enough times? To do with a spring, a well, or a fountain. It is the word. It is not once used in this way. It is the word, and look it up. It's 5869 in your Strongs. It is the word ayin, which is the word eyes. Now, how do you go from eyes to a well or a fountain or a spring? I have no clue. But I will tell you that this word this word 5869 is translated 372 times as eyes. It's translated as sight. So we know we're talking eyes that see. We can't fake this. 277 times, and it's just used as eye 68 times. Now let me tell you where the first usage is. Oh, this is just so good. Its first usage is in Genesis 3:5, in the little dialogue between the serpent and Eve, and he is saying to her, oh, you won't die. Why, in the day you eat of it, this fruit, your eyes will be opened, and you will be and you will be like God, knowing good from evil. I mean, I just think that's so fascinating. So here we have a word that it's only used as spring. So it's not even used as fountain. It's not even used as well any other place. It's used as spring 1 time in the New American Standard Translations, which are word for word translation. So I was just getting more